بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. If you're watching this video and it's Salah time, please pause it and go pray and come back when you're done. Please check out the description section of this video to donate to Palestine and to support the channel. Alright, so Candace Owens is at it again, ruffling Israeli feathers to the dismay of Zionists and Islamophobes galore. And she came with the receipts to back up her claim that Israel was supposedly behind the tragic event of 9/11 and that they pinned it on Muslims. I was a really small child when this took place way back in 2001, and I don't really remember much about the actual event, but I do remember years later the circulation of documentaries questioning the propaganda surrounding it, as well as the suspicion towards America's military reaction. What I can confirm is that this is when the anti-Muslim prejudice was really amped up in the West, and it has been at the same consistently discriminatory level since then because of the mainstream media. Let's take a look at what Candace had to say.
Conspiracy theories about 9/11, but irrespective of how they want to categorize it, at the very least, you came out of it recognizing that not everything was told to the public about that day and that many questions were not being answered. I mean, some of the things that we were even told make entirely no sense. For example, we were told that the terrorist attacks were executed by the Saudis, remember? Which totally explains why we then decided to go to war with Iraq, who had weapons of mass destruction that were never found. And who can forget how the newscasters told the public that they were definitely sure that it was the Saudis? Don't remember? Let's revisit it. Let's go back to 2001 and watch this clip from our trusted news source, CNN. Take a listen.
Another development on Saturday, New York officials revealed at a news conference here in the city that a hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that. No other details were given, but the discovery prompted the FBI and police to expand the search area down in Lower Manhattan.
I like how even the newscaster says, if you can believe that, because nope, I refuse to believe that, and you should not either. You are telling me that somebody hijacked a plane, got onto the plane, crashed the plane exploded into fire, tower collapsed. They could not even find all of the human remains. But in all of this, in all of the fire, in the collapse of the building, and all the dust, in all the struggle, they found, and didn't give any details of how or who found it, a passport. The little paper passport survived everything. And they go, oh, well, look, this is one of the hijackers. This is one of the Saudi hijackers. He must have dropped his passport from the sky before he flew the plane into the building, and somehow they couldn't even find the audio boxes, the black boxes from the plane. But they have the passport. So here it is. Yeah, nope, not going for that.
I love how Candace rolled the old CNN news segment to back up her statement that its clear information was withheld and how things just don't add up, especially when initially Saudi Arabia was being blamed for it, but Iraq was invaded instead. And the reason the US government and Western media gave for the invasion of Iraq was that they supposedly had weapons of mass destruction, which were never found. However, America's weapons of mass destruction did take the lives of over 1 million Iraqis and Afghans. Candace pointed out that at the time the media claimed a tiny paper Saudi passport was found linking them to 9/11. She said they didn't find all the human remains under the rubble of the Twin Towers, but they found the passport. How convenient. Not that I want any type of war to happen ever, but why wasn't there a war between the USA and Saudi Arabia instead? Could it be that Saudi is a major ally of America and Israel, and the oil trades they make are extremely important to all of their economies? Anyway, let's roll the next clip of Candace herself rolling a news segment from another American media outlet, ABC News, from 2002, that reported on Israel's supposed involvement with September 11th.
This segment ran also back in 2002 on ABC News as an update to a prior segment that they had done. Take a listen.
In the days after the September attacks, there were countless rumors about strange coincidences surrounding the events. One report about a group of Middle Eastern men spotted the morning of September 11th parked just across the river from New York City has not gone away. Investigation of their presence has led to questions about whether Israel was conducting espionage on U.S. soil. We're joined now by ABC's John Miller with an exclusive report this evening.
That's right, Elizabeth. This is a case that took the FBI and the CIA more than 2 months to sort out, while 5 Israelis waited in jail. It began when this woman was watching the Twin Towers burning from her apartment in New Jersey. She noticed 3 men on top of a van, posing for pictures with the towers burning in the background.
and I could see that they were like happy. You know, they didn't look shocked to me. You know, they didn't look shocked. I thought it was very strange.
The witness called police, who stopped the van hours later and arrested 5 men. All 5, it turns out, were Israeli. They were turned over to the FBI. Sources tell ABC News during a check of national security databases, some of the men were listed as having had connections with Israeli intelligence. At the FBI, that set off alarm bells. The FBI needed the answers to 3 important questions. Who were these men? What brought them to that parking lot on the morning of September 11th? And did they have any advance knowledge of what was going to happen that day? The men said they were just taking pictures at the time. They said they worked for a company called Urban Moving. The FBI obtained a search warrant for the company's offices.
2 SUVs were filled up with between 9 and 12 boxes and computers.
Not long after the arrests, the offices of Urban Moving were simply abandoned. Almost everything was left behind. In jail, the 5 Israelis were repeatedly interrogated and given lie detector tests. Stephen Gordon was their American lawyer.
They were asked questions if they had ever been approached by or hired by any non-United States intelligence community.
While there is still some debate among American intelligence officials, many investigators believe some of the men were part of an Israeli operation aimed at monitoring radical Islamic charities that support groups like Hamas, something lawyers for the 5 men and the Israeli government strongly deny.
These 5 Israelis were not involved in any intelligence operation in the United States. The story is simply false.
In the end, the FBI concluded there was no evidence that any of the 5 men had advance knowledge of the September 11th plot. After 71 days, the 5 Israelis were deported, leaving some ruffled feathers among both U.S. and Israeli officials.
You have to give it up to Candace and her detective skills for pulling out these decades-old news segments exposing the mainstream media. What was astonishing about what ABC reported was that there was actually 5 Israeli men linked to the Israeli government posted up in a van on the morning of 9/11 taking pictures and spying on the Twin Towers as they fell. And it was their lack of an emotional response that set off alarm bells for the lady who spotted it and called the police on them. And the fact that the place these men told the FBI they supposedly worked was completely abandoned not long after their arrest just adds to the suspicion further. And what was the result of these Israelis being linked to probably the biggest attack on US soil in history? They were conveniently sent home with no repercussions. Let's roll the final clip where Candace speaks about how she feels 9/11 was supposedly an inside job.
You don't have to believe that 9/11 was an inside job, but you better tether yourself to the understanding that false flag events are a reality, not an imagination, not a conspiracy theory. It is a reality. And there were plenty of Americans who thought that it was, at the very least, incredibly suspicious. You'd probably be anti-Semite if you had any questions about a foreign government overseas that had people who were attached to their intelligence apparatus who were celebrating and taking photos as the towers burned and American citizens were dying. Now, why are we talking about this? They essentially used our paralyzing fear and the media and the school system, stand up, the indoctrination, remember the people that died, to jam through the Patriot Act. We're also talking about this because they used that same fear to throw us into more endless wars in the Middle East. And if you remember those fear tactics as vividly as I do, then you might be looking around and recognizing a very familiar playbook. You're a terrorist sympathizer if you don't like bombs and war and dead people and, my gosh, the Muslims, they're bad.
Candace hinted at a very important point in regards to the repeated patterns of propaganda currently being used to oppress Palestine, and that is that it was also used to invade Iraq and Afghanistan. She said the same fear-mongering tactics have been used over and over again to paint all Muslims as the bad guys in order to justify endless wars in the Middle East. Take your pick. Syria, Egypt, Lebanon, Libya, Iraq, Yemen, Afghanistan, Iran, Palestine, the list goes on. Candace said it herself, American citizens were suspicious then and they're suspicious now. I mean, can you blame them when the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee, or AIPAC for short, is one of the several pro-Israel political lobbying organisations in the USA and is the most powerful lobbying group in American politics? Look, it is absolutely horrible and tragic that thousands of people lost their lives in New York on September 11th. And if this was an inside job like Candace said it was, then it's absolutely cold and calculated to use your own citizens or your ally citizens as collateral damage and blame someone else in order to fool the public to gain their support to invade other countries in the name of self-defence, whilst covering up the fact that what you're actually doing is committing war crimes for political and financial gain. There are people who are claiming the same thing happened on October 7th. Some say it was an inside job. I can't be 100% sure, but one similarity both these events have is the propaganda that's being used to justify the dehumanisation and excessive loss of life of Muslims. And how these dates, September 11th and October 7th, are being burned into our brains as slogans to justify the injustices being carried out against civilians in Middle Eastern nations, which is currently Palestine. Add that to the many other numerous brainwashing extremist labels that have been used for around 4 decades now against Muslims and Islam. And as Candace said, false accusations of anti-Semitism if you dare question Israel even though you have nothing against Jewish people. However, the major difference these days is we have social media and we can counter the lies and report the truth. Thank you for watching. Make sure to join my free Telegram group via the link in the description, where we as Muslims can speak freely and without censorship about issues like this, and in order to guide and support each other in our deen. And remember to like, subscribe and become a channel member for access to exclusive content. Until next time, inshallah, Jazakallah khair.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allah.